So what I am doing in this part of the conversation is describing a little bit of our experience, especially in the last year, supporting counties on the collaborative child abuse prevention planning and our conversations, even in getting ready for this webinar on what it means to have a prevention mindset. So this comes out of our conversations as well as ways that we've been involved in the community. So if we go to the next slide. So last year, Strategies hosted two events. One was our statewide convening of prevention planning counties. And that's where we first heard Junius Williams and were challenged by what we're going to be challenged by even more deeply today, that call for greater equity, which includes addressing disproportionality of impact in child welfare and genuine community voice. The other thing that informed our conversations and our actions in this last year was a webinar that came shortly after that with best-selling author Dan Heath, who wrote the book Upstream. And here are some of the things that challenged us. Just a couple grab quotes that we used in promoting that webinar, but they were part of that discussion and were infused in our discussions in various degrees with all of the counties we work with as a real challenge about where do we go with this. So one is presenting the problem. Surely we'd all prefer to live in the upstream world where problems are prevented rather than reacted to. What holds us back? Click next. Part of what he says is that the tragedy of so much of the social service sector is that leaders tacitly accept the flawed system that begets their work. So why have we not done prevention? Why do we continue to have the problems that we're trying to ameliorate? Next click. One reason why we tend to favor reactions, because it's more tangible. Downstream work is easier to see, easier to measure. Next click. Upstream work is about reducing the probability that problems will happen. And for that reason, the work must culminate in systems change, which is much more complex and a lot of work. But, go ahead and click. But this is the vision, and this is part of the vision that Hillary challenged us with. What the world needs now is a quieter breed of hero, one fighting for a world in which rescues are no longer required. So, as I said, the challenges of last year, there were conversations not around tables, I suppose, around Zoom screens in various counties about how do we put these in action. And that was part of the inspiration for this webinar and webinar series. Also, California, through OCAP, participated in the Prevention Mindset Institute. And that got us thinking, actually, is this slide might be out of order. Do we have the one on the prevention? Oh, this it is, thank you. That got us some of the principles that came out of the Prevention Mindset Institute in our conversations in setting this up, help frame what it is we're talking about when we're talking about a prevention mindset. They frame it as ambitious goals designed to create a more prevention-focused and equitable environment to support child and family well-being, and actions to partner with communities, identify critical stakeholders, address policy and structural changes, and track progress towards successful outcomes. So you can kind of hear how that responds to Dan Heath's challenge. So we as a committee said, well, if we're going to do a webinar on prevention mindset, we need to define it. But that's kind of part of doing the webinar, and part of exploring, part of your definition comes in action. And so instead of saying, here's the definitive last statement on the prevention mindset, what we've been able to tease out are some assumptions. And so now we'll go to the next slide. So here are some assumptions. So with a click, and you can kind of click after I read each one to bring up the next one, as we've been able to frame them so far. So this is open to discussion and dialogue. You can send notes in the chat or Q&A if you want clarity on this. But here's some of the assumptions that we've been able to articulate. That it involves accepting the collective challenge to truly reduce child abuse and neglect. and increase child, family, and well-being. It involves changing community conditions and building on community strengths, as well as improving services. So about the conditions, not just the services. Enacting change through shared vision. Centering our goals and work in equity, for that not just to be an afterthought, but really the center. Making community voice and partnership the drivers of change. Again, not just a token participation. And seeing that everyone has a role, nobody holds the whole solution. We might have one more or two more. Looking beyond current funding silos that are focused downstream. And determining definitions of need and measures of progress using data on disparities and inequities.